We've seen the dramatic first day of the Gaza ceasefire deal with 3 Israeli hostages and dozens of Palestinian prisoners being released under the terms of the ceasefire deal in Gaza between Israel and Hamas, brokered by Egypt, by Qatar, as well as by the United States of America. So, an important day in West Asia after 15 months of conflict, but serious questions remain about the viability of this ceasefire, how long it will last. Joining me to decode exactly these questions and what the ceasefire deal and this first day has meant for both sides in this conflict is Colonel Rajiv Agarwal, who is, of course, a well-known West Asia expert. Colonel Agarwal, thank you so much for joining me. Could you tell me a little bit about how you saw the first day of the implementation of this ceasefire deal?
For having me on the show, and you're right, it's a landmark day despite all the skepticism and the doubts that were there. And as you would recall, even the implementation time was deferred from 8:30 till the time it finally came about at 11:15, when so-called technical details were sorted out between Hamas and Israel regarding the names and details of the hostages. But nonetheless, it's a very big day. 15 months into the fighting, more than 46,000 people who have lost their lives. These are the official figures. Many more would still be buried under the rubble once it is discovered. And almost the entire infrastructure in Gaza Strip has been destroyed beyond repair. So it will take not months, it will not take years, it may take decades for Gaza to come up what it was pre 7th October 2003. So there's no doubt that it was a remarkable day. And at the end of the day, even the 90 Palestinian prisoners who were supposed to be released were released. So, given how the things have transpired between May 2024, when the deal was first presented, until date, it finally happened. And a day before Trump was to be sworn in, which was his, so-called red line that the ceasefire should be in place before he is sworn in. So everything seems to have fallen in place.
So, could I ask you a little bit about Donald Trump and his contribution to what we've seen in terms of getting the ceasefire deal done? There was some speculation that, look, in May, the Biden administration had put forward a ceasefire deal. There was a sense that, okay, the ceasefire deal has, according to some, has continued upon many of the main precepts that were established in May when President Biden had made that proposal. Of course, why has it taken so long for the deal to finally go through? Some are placing the blame on the Biden administration, saying that they didn't use enough leverage. Donald Trump has been more willing to use leverage. Could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, it is almost a mirror image of the Biden plan that was presented on 31st May 2024, and it was readily accepted by Hamas. The initial reports were that even Israel had accepted that before they withdrew from it within a day or two, and even the UN Security Council had endorsed it on 10th of June, saying that this is the perfect plan and should go ahead. But when we look at the picture of what has happened on 19th of January and what was on June 24th, there are stark differences. Yes, Trump factor has to be the most predominant factor, because he could bull his way through Netanyahu and what I have written, make him see the bigger picture and get the ceasefire done. But from an Israeli perspective also, you have to see that where they were on 31st May 2024 and where they are on January 2025. There's a huge difference in the war perspective, in the dynamics of how Israel sees it itself in the region today. Now today, Hamas has almost been destroyed as far as its military capability is concerned. I know the ideology cannot be destroyed. Hamas is absolutely shattered. Its leadership has been totally torn apart. Nasrallah has been killed. The triple assassinations on 30th July made a huge difference. But to me, the most important thing was how Syria fell in December. And the fall of Syria, the manner in which it fell, and how it has suddenly broken the most vital link between Iran and its proxies in the region, that I think has made a huge difference. And despite Trump being the major factor in influencing or coercing this ceasefire, I think Israel has also seen some part of this larger picture, that it is now almost safe from all what it was in May 2024.
Understood. Could I also ask you another question about what happens moving forward? We've already seen in Israel, the Security Cabinet has, of course, approved the deal, but many in Israel's politics, perhaps on the right wing of Israeli politics, have been very clear that they may support the deal up to a particular point to get hostages released. But if it comes to the withdrawal of Israeli military forces from parts of Gaza that are strategically valuable, that they will not support those elements of the deal. We also had an interesting statement coming out from the Secretary of State for the United States, Antony Blinken, saying that Hamas has been able to recruit a large number of fighters to make up for the losses that it suffered. You're a military man yourself. What do you make of Secretary Blinken's comments when it comes to the decimation of Hamas, but their ability to replenish those ranks?
Yeah, so I mean, that is what has been the reality of Hamas and Hezbollah over the last 2 decades. And this is what Israel has not understood, that you can't defeat these ideologies which are so deeply embedded both in the minds and the fabric of the society just by clear military operations. You can destroy the military capabilities in one war, they will recoup. You can kill the cadres and the leadership will regrow. If you remember 1992, when the Hezbollah chief was assassinated, up came Nasrallah, who was just, I think, 32 or 34 years old then. And see how Nasrallah shaped Hezbollah over the next 3 decades. So very difficult for an ideology to be defeated till the time there is a clear-cut political or a social movement which somehow overcomes that ideology which is there. Mm-hmm. As regards the ceasefire, Shashank, it is going to be a very, very tentative and a fragile ceasefire. And both sides, especially Israel, will be looking for any loopholes where it can, break away from the ceasefire and get back on the offensive. Mm-hmm. Even Netanyahu in his address, I think yesterday, said that this is a temporary halt to the war and not a permanent end to the war. And any kind of a violation or a loophole, we retain the right to get back to the war. So this 42 days, which is the first phase, are the most crucial ones. And as per the deal, on the 16th day of the first phase, the discussions on the second phase have to start. So imagine if the second phase discussions get stalled midway through the first phase only, you never know how the ceasefire may end. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing is that this is a huge respite for the people in Gaza who have been facing death day in and day out, and an opportunity for the humanitarian agencies like the UNRWA and Red Cross and others to deliver critical humanitarian aid to the suffering people in Gaza. Mm-hmm.
So if I could ask you for your sense of India's interest in what's happening right now in the Middle East. We've seen, of course, that India put out a statement supporting and welcoming the Gaza ceasefire. What exactly would India's position be moving forward on the conflict? What would we ideally like to see?
Absolutely. I mean, India has vital interest in the entire West Asian region, and any kind of a instability or a security incident or a disturbance creates a huge cost to us, not only in terms of direct cost, but in terms of indirect cost. We all remember how even when the Gaza war broke out in October 2023, India had to undertake evacuation operations for its citizens through Jordan, and that takes huge cost. Also, we have critical, economic interest. The IMEC corridor, which was announced with the G20 summit in September 2023, it has not been able to take off because of this Gaza war. Otherwise, by this time, a major part of the basic infrastructure would have been, done, and we could see the fruits of the IMEC corridor coming through in next few years. You see the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal route has been blocked by the Houthis just because of the Gaza war, and it has inflicted huge amount of time and costs on the trade which India and all other countries have to undertake for its trade across the Arabian Sea and the Suez Canal. So India has welcomed it, and rightly so. And it will be in India's and everybody's interest that this ceasefire prevails. And it fructifies into phase 2 and phase 3, and some kind of normalcy comes about in this conflict-ridden region.
And so if I may ask you one final question, we've seen, of course, a lot of conversation about India's stance on the conflict. It's always said that it supports a two-state solution, but recently we've heard a lot of analysis coming out of West Asia, especially from Israel, saying that, look, there is in Israel at this point in time, very, very little support for a two-state solution. There seems to be a very limited political constituency. In fact, the Knesset, even the Israel's parliament, even voted on this question and voted against the creation of Palestinian statehood. So, if Israel is at this point in time saying that, look, we are unwilling to back the two-state solution, and India's fundamental policy in the region is based on support for the two-state solution, what exactly is the path moving forward? Does it make things much more complicated for India when it comes to the Israel-Palestine conflict?
See, India has maintained its line very clearly. Firstly, it has supported Israel in its fight against terror, and if you remember, Modi was the first person to, endorse Israel's right to fight against Hamas when this terror attack took place on 7th October. But on the same, side, at the same time, India is very clear that the only resolution to this decades-long conflict can only come about with a viable two-state solution. So, despite the fact that Israel has passed a resolution in its parliament in July 2024 that we do not support a two-state solution, and Netanyahu has been very vocal about that they cannot be, he does not accept any two-state solution, then what is the way out? Is Israel looking at a greater Israel solution where it incorporates and encapsulates the entire Palestinian territories and then governs them as one entity? And there are huge risks and costs to it, that possibility also. So to my mind, whether it comes about today, tomorrow, or whenever, there has to be some kind of a two-state solution. And even in this peace deal which has been, or the ceasefire deal which has been signed, the US administration made it very clear that ultimately there has to be West Bank and Gaza Strip which are physically linked to each other, and then only a two-state solution can come about.
Understood.
Also, if I can take just one more minute, regarding the US policy under Trump in West Asia, Trump has been very focused on what he wants in West Asia, and what he wants in West Asia is a reconciliation between Israel and the Arab countries, which we saw already in the Abraham Accords in September 2020. But he also sees his policies in targeting Iran, and because he considers, along with Israel, that Iran is the enemy number one. If both these things have to happen, the final outcome can only happen to this reconciliation or this thing when there's a solution to the Palestinian conflict, because Saudi Arabia, despite all its keenness to normalize relation with Israel, will not be able to do so till the time there is some kind of a positive movement on a Palestine state.
Colonel Rajiv Agarwal, thank you so much for your time, for explaining to us what exactly is happening as we enter this second day of the Gaza ceasefire, pointing out to us that things are still very fragile, that Israel, of course, and many elements in Israel, especially Prime Minister Netanyahu, will be looking for any attempt to ensure that they can go back on the offensive and also, as he put it, reshape the face of the Middle East. Colonel Rajiv Agarwal, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much to our viewers for joining us here on India Today Global.